Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z Flashback, a series of explorations of the 150 games that make up Atari Flashback Classics for Nintendo Switch. Today's game is Street Racer, which was a 1977 release from Atari, developed by Larry Kaplan as one of the launch titles for the Atari 2600, or the video computer system as it was known back then. Kaplan is a name that we've come across a few times on the various Atari A to Z series. He also developed Air-Sea Battle for the Atari 2600 launch, and he was one of the founding members of Activision, where he went on to create the game Kaboom, which was one of the most best-selling games for the Atari 2600. It was in the top 10, I believe. In a 2007 interview with Digital Press, Kaplan said that Street Racer was the one game of his that he would like to go back and improve. He felt it lacked good gameplay and smooth scrolling and a lot of things that made it good, basically. And as you might expect, this game was not especially well received back on its original release. It wasn't hated or anything like that, but it was regarded as a bit of a weak point in the lineup, although there is some stuff to like here, particularly if you've got some other people to play with. So let's go play Street Racer.
Okay, here we are once again with Atari Flashback Classics, and we're onto a brand new page of games. In fact, there's only one more page of games after we get through this one, so we are getting there. There's a few more sports games to make it through on this page, so please look forward to those. But yeah, some interesting stuff to play on this one. A few that I'm quite looking forward to, particularly the two versions of Super Breakout are a lot of fun. First though, we got Street Racer by Larry Kaplan. So let's have a look at the manual. Use your standard panel controllers with this game program. Be sure to plug the controller cable firmly into blah 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 blah. Oh, excuse me. Been recording all morning. My back is going a bit. Right, in all the racing games, use the knob on the top of the controllers to steer the vehicle. The red button on the side is your accelerator in Street Racer, Slalom, Scoop Ball and Number Cruncher. Use the red button as the forward thrust in Dodge 'em and to fire bullets in Jet Shooter. I love how all of those are trademarked, like anyone cares. Right, so this is a collection of games that all use the same basic functionality, and then it provides a few different twists on them. So the first one is Street Racer, where you avoid collisions. In Slalom, you're basically steering through gaps in gates. In Dodge 'em, you are avoiding obstacles. In Jet Shooter, you are trying to destroy enemy aircraft. Number Cruncher is the one that a lot of people like in this one. So here we are. Got an appetite for numbers. 1, 2, 3 and 4 players each control one motorcycle that crunches numbers on the track. In 1 and 2 player games, each player drives up a private vertical track. In 3 and 4 player games, 2 players make up a motorcycle team and share the right track. Use the controller knob to steer your chopper down the track. Your objective is to run over the numbers on the track, 2, 4, 6. You score the face value of each number you squash. For example, score 6 points when you crunch a number 6. Your motorcycle is colour coordinated with the score at the top of the track. Number cruncher games are completed when a player scores 99 points or after 2 minutes and 16 seconds. That's it, basically. Then we have Scoop Ball. Your object is to catch balls and deposit them into a computer scooper. To catch the balls, you have a giant moving scooper. You score 1 point each time you catch the ball. Continue to catch balls until a computer scooper appears on the screen. When you steer your scooper into the computer scooper, you score 3 points and deposit the ball or balls you've collected. If you crash before depositing, you lose your chance to deposit the balls and score. Okay, so a bunch of ways to play this game. Let's have a look. Right, so we begin with 1 player Street Racer, 1 obstacle. Now you'll notice, regardless of whether you're playing single player or multiplayer in this, there's always this split screen display. If you're playing 1 player games, then the computer control player just sort of sits there and doesn't really do anything. So it's more about attaining high scores than trying to beat them. So let's start with this one here. We are on the right. So we press the fire button to accelerate. And all we need to do is avoid the incoming cars. It's not a huge problem if you do hit something, it's just you waste a bit of time. And as with most of these early Atari 2600 games, you have that all-important 2-minute 16-second time limit, which was supposedly chosen by people at Atari for the optimum amount of time required to have fun. Now you'll notice in this, there's actually a few sort of little balancing things going on. So when you're going at low speed, the cars will only move vertically down the screen, but once you accelerate past a certain point, they start moving diagonally and bouncing around the screen. So you can sort of use that to your advantage to a certain extent, but it's mostly about having quick reflexes and how you can use those panel controls to quickly move from side to side and avoid danger quite easily. I actually don't mind this game all that much. I mean, it looks like hot ass, and not in a good way, but in terms of gameplay, the sort of basic dodging gameplay is perfectly competent. There's a racing game on the Philips G7000 that was a bit like this that I always enjoyed, so playing this always reminds me a bit of that, which makes me happy, so... Right, there we go. So I scored 88 points that time around. So the other variations of that Street Racer game, we've got a 2-player mode where 2 people play side by side. We've got a 3-player mode where 2 people share the right-hand side. A 4-player mode where 2 people share both sides. 2-player Street Racer with 2 obstacles at a time instead of just 1. For some reason you can't play that in single player. 4-player Street Racer with 2 obstacles at a time. Again, you can't play that in 1 or 3-player. Right, on to skiing then. So this is basically a very similar sort of thing. So you steer your way down through the course and your aim is to go through those gates. And again, you can accelerate by holding down the fire button. As you can see from the fact that the computer is actually scoring reasonably respectively despite not actually doing anything. Going fast isn't necessarily the best choice all the time in this. But I'm sure as heck gonna try it. So, as I said in the intro, Larry Kaplan spoke about this game during an interview in, like, I think it was 2007 or 2006. And he said that his sort of big regret with this game was that it wasn't very smooth. So, like, if you look at how the stuff is moving down the screen, it's moving by large chunks. It's moving by sort of characters rather than doing smooth or fine scrolling. And he said if he had the opportunity to make this game again or to make it better, he would do something about that, because the 2600 was capable of better than this. But you also have to remember that this was a launch game for the system, and as such, despite the fact that Atari had built the thing, they had no idea of what it was completely capable of. They just knew that it had this certain hardware inside it and you could do certain things with it. And it wasn't until much later that a lot of developers started to realise exactly what the 2600's hardware was actually capable of. And so you saw a lot of this kind of stuff in the early days, with its big chunky graphics and that distinctive big blocky font up at the top of the screen. And very basic gameplay, but you know what? It did the job. Again, like the first Street Racer game, that's not a terrible game. I don't hate that game at all. Alright, 1-player skiing, 1 obstacle. Then you have 2-player skiing again with 1 obstacle, 3-player skiing with 1 obstacle, 4-player skiing with 1 obstacle, and then the same basic variations that you do in the street racing. So 2-player with 2 obstacles on screen at once, 4-player with 2 obstacles on screen at once, and then we're on to Dodge 'em, which is very similar to Street Racer. So let's give it a go. So the main difference in dodge 'em is that by holding down the fire button you can move up the screen. And in order to score points, you've actually got to reach the top of the screen rather than just passing by obstacles. So despite what might initially seem like some very obvious similarity to the basic Street Racer game, this one is actually quite different in terms of execution. This one's more about timing and taking risks than just nimble dodging. So once again, I'm on the right, if that wasn't already clear. I'm on the right for all of these games. And if you're wondering how you get a 4-player game on the Atari 2600 when it's only got 2 controller ports, the reason for that is that the paddle controllers that this game used, they came in pairs, so a pair of paddles would connect to 1 controller port. So if you connected 2 sets of paddles, you would have enough controllers for 4 players. Computer Play is actually doing surprisingly well, considering. Look at that, you had a lovely clean run there. Not like me, I'm making a right hash of this. Or can I eke out a win? Oh no! That could have been that is going to be disastrous. Come on, I got this. There we go, safe victory. Okay, so that's dodge 'em. So that's a little bit different, which is nice. Yeah, like I say, I did kind of initially assume that that was just the same as the Street Racer game, but no, the actual vertical movement of that makes that distinctive and a bit more interesting. So again, you can play that in 2-player. You can't play this in 3 or 4-player because of the nature of the game. You can play it with 2 obstacles at the same time though. So let's have a go at this one. To learn to recognise those patterns and what the best side to pass on is, depending on their position, I guess. Because it's not always quite as simple as you might think. Oh, I've been overtaken. CPU player taking the lead. Oh dear. It's going very poorly. Although he's having trouble getting past 10 points. One thing you need to remember in this one is that you can actually let go of the fire button to move back down the screen as well, and that can actually be quite helpful sometimes. If the obstacle isn't in quite the right position for you to be able to pass by, just drop down the screen a little bit until the timing is a bit more optimal. You think I'd have learned to apply that knowledge a bit better by now, but apparently not. Oh no! Oh, we've equalised again. Come on, I've got this. Oh no! Oh, it's going to be a close one, this one. Come on, this is in the bag for me, surely. Surely. Yes, there we go. All right, 28 to 23. So you can then do that 2-player. Now on to Jet Shooter, which it's a shooting game. It's a very simple, very rudimentary shoot 'em up, where the acceleration side of things is automatic, and all you have to do is shoot your very, very slow bullets at the oncoming enemies. And as you can see, the computer player is not very good at this one because he doesn't move. That's a horrible colour scheme this one is using. Green on purple is not a good look. But yeah, this one's not a particularly great game, as you can see. Because it's just a case of shoot, move out the way, shoot, move out the way, shoot, move out the way, shoot, move out the way. It's very, very, very easy. That said, you have got to give this game some credit for the variety of experiences that it offers. By using the same basic, simple mechanics and presentation, the fact it manages to provide some noticeably different games to play is quite admirable. And not at all uncommon in this early days of the Atari 2600. You'll remember from things like Air-Sea Battle and Combat and that sort of thing. All of these early games had lots of different variations on how to play that made use of the same basic controls and presentation in many cases, but played very differently. Like, compare how differently the Tank Pong version of Combat plays compared to, say, the Jet Fighter mode in Combat and that sort of thing. There's very small differences in presentation and how you control it, but it plays very, very differently. Alright, there's 2-player jet shooter. 1-player jet shooter with 2 obstacles, which I doubt makes it any more interesting, but let's give it a go nonetheless. No, it's just jet shooter where you can score a little bit more quickly. I'm concentrating because I want to see if this is the one game where I'll be able to win by getting 99 points instead of running out of time. Well, the pressure's on. I'm starting to feel it. My thumb is starting to hurt. These analog controls that are nowhere near as comfortable as a real paddle controller. Come on, 90. Nearly there. Victory! Wonderful. Check me out. Right, then you can do that in 2-player. Now on to Number Cruncher. So this one, as we saw, is all about running over numbers to get points. So again, I believe you can... Yeah, so you have to be a little bit careful in this one. You have to basically hit the numbers head on. Otherwise it counts as a crash with them. So I think the way it calculates that is sort of if the head of your motorcyclist collides with the number, then that counts as collecting it. Whereas if the body of your motorcyclist collides with it, then that counts as crashing into it. So see, that one's over pretty quickly because, well, you score a lot more quickly than in some other games. So, but yeah, a lot of people think that game is the highlight of this package. I'm not so sure because there's not a lot to it. And there's also a bit of randomness in there as well. Like, it's basically whoever gets the better numbers wins in that one. So it's mostly up to dumb luck more than anything. So you can play that 3-player. You play it 4-player. You play in teams if you're doing that. Now we are on to Scoop Ball. So how does this work? So we have to catch a ball and drop it into the computer scooper. Oh, this one is 2-player only, I guess. So I can't actually see my scores. Oh, that's a scooper. Okay, I should be avoiding those other things then. There we go. And you lose a bit of time if you collide with a scooper and you're not holding a ball. Or if you collide with it incorrectly, I guess. There we go. Yeah, not 100% sure what's going on with this one, particularly with that message blocking my view of the scores, but, well, you get the idea anyway. You catch things, you drop it in other things. And again, like the original Street Racer one, if you're going faster, then the obstacles start moving more erratically. Yeah, this one's just a bit weird. Okay, well, I scored 27 points to player 2's 4. You can play Scoop Ball with 3 players or with 4 players, and then you're back to Street Racer. So that's the whole thing. And I've gone green because of the screen. But anyway, that is Street Racer. Not the best game on the 2600 by any means, but it's not as bad as some people like to make out. There are worse games on the 2600, particularly for multiple players. So give it a go, I guess. It's worth a try. Let's open the curtains, let a little bit of light in. Oh, there's a cat behind this curtain. Hello. Anyway, yeah, that is Street Racer by Larry Kaplan for Atari 2600. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.